You are speaking with the Meeples champion, and we're here for another 50 game countdown on our countdown from 365 to number one of my favorites out of the games I reviewed last year. Now, we are going to be kicking off. We're 100 games in already, so today is actually going to be kicking off at 265. And the game we're picking today is called Hues and Cues. Hues and Cues is a party game, the concept of giving a clue, one word, and people trying to pick colors that would reflect to that clue. And then you give them a second clue, and now they pick another color. And eventually you reveal which one it was, and you give points out of who got the exact right color, 3 points, who got the second best color, which is the one surrounding it, 2 points, who got the one surrounding that, 1 point. And you go through the game, you do a few rounds, and usually it's at least 2 clues given per person, so 2 different colors, and then at the end you figure out who has the most points. It's a nice game. It's one that I definitely would pick for out of my potential games to play with my family. This isn't again on my high picking area. This isn't something that I'm massively going to go after, but it's on my list of games I'd be happy to play with others. 264, Wasteland Express Delivery Service. Now this is a great game of post-apocalyptic. You're building your cars, you're going through, you're trying to collect resources. You have 3 different random jobs that you're trying to finish off. So you're going to be trying to get these jobs, and the first person to do all 3 wins the game. It's a great game, but it's big. It's not one I own. It takes a while, and it's not something everybody loves. So even though I actually really enjoyed the game, it is not a game that I would be constantly pushing for, because the game has to do with who you're playing with, and I don't have a lot of people who really love the game, so it drops down because I don't want to play with people who are mediocre into it. You want to play it at a 4-player count with 4 people who really, really like the game. 263, The Resistance. The Resistance is a fantastic game of, you have the Resistance, and then you have the actual crew of people who are trying to go and fight back. And essentially you all think you're on a team together, but some of you are undercover agents, and the undercover agents know each other, and they're trying to sabotage the mission. And when you get 3 sabotages through, or 3 successful attacks by the Resistance through, their team wins. It's a fun game. It's one that I really enjoy. However, compared to the early days in my first game group where I was introduced to this game, and the game was a huge success, it has failed with my wife's family. It's mediocre with my family, and it's not one that my current game group likes. So the game is dipped because I realized it wasn't 100% of a hit. It was a game that used to be a top, 50 game for me. But because I've realized it doesn't hit for everybody, it's started to drop in quality. Number 262, Crossfire. This is another one of those, small, quick, hidden identity, card games. It's fast, it's good. I put it above the Resistance because, at least compared to the Resistance, where it requires the effort of the players, and that's why if you don't have a lot of people into it, that game fails. Crossfire, it's faster. It doesn't require as much effort by the players with their hidden roles. So the game, while it may not be quite as good as a whole, its ceiling isn't as big as the Resistance, its success factor is a lot lower, and so I can still enjoy this with people. 261 goes back to the Resistance though, and the game is called Bang. Now Bang was from my initial group, and we loved it. This is one of our most played games. We used to play this guaranteed 2-3 times a night every Saturday. But then when I left that group, and I tried playing with my family, I tried playing it with my wife, I tried playing it with her family, I tried playing it with my friends, it was a failure constantly. We just had the right mix of people who were all getting into games at the right time, and that group all got to love Bang together, so it was a massive success for that group. But outside of that group, I've just never had a success factor with it. So while I have a lot of nostalgia for the game, and I wish it could be one that I could go back to play, it's just dipped, and it's just not what it used to be, and as a result, it's all the way back to 261. At 260, we have Crypt. Now, Crypt is a much faster game than the last few I've gone over. It's a game that goes really quick. It requires just 2 people if you want. You can go as high as 4, but it's fast. It doesn't require much to play the game. This is not a game I love, but it works for the Halloween theme. It works for the fact that people can't really dislike the game because the game's over before you can have much of an opinion to say if you love or hate it. So it's it just kind of rides game. It's a good one to pull out and play really quick to have a little bit of fun, but you're not looking to have a great time. So this is not one that I'm going to normally be pushing for, but it's a good one to fill in some gap times. 259, Betrayal at House on the Hill. Now, I admit this is not a game that I love. This was a game that I actually used to think I hated. But upon further review, a replay, a second play this year, I actually found that the game wasn't as bad as I remembered. It was, yes, a co-op. And when I say it wasn't as bad as I remembered, I don't like co-ops. So that's why I didn't love this game. However, this does a fantastic job of riding that line, because the first half of the game, you don't know yet what you're actually competing in. You're doing your basics, you're unlocking things in the house, you're collecting items, you're figuring out how to do certain things. But when you get to a certain point in the game, based on the things you've unlocked, you go to the rulebook, it now unlocks and tells you what story arc you're in. And that's where you figure out which one of you is a traitor, or if you're doing something that's not the normal traitor game, usually somebody on your group is going to end up betraying you and joining the other side. But like when we replayed, the first one we had it was a treasure hunt. And so now it was all of us versus each other, and the first person to get the treasure and get out won. So it was awesome. And then the next game was a villain, and we had somebody betray us, and that was awesome. So this is a really good game. It's not my style, but it is one of the best co-ops I've played because it has the ability that somebody's gonna betray you. So that first half of the game is kind of hard to trust each other. You're not really working as a team. 258, One Night Ultimate Vampire. Now, this one is really good because they've done a combination of things. One, they brought in additional roles, so you're not simply playing as somebody's the vampire, somebody's the vampire hunter, and somebody's the person speaking. There's other versions to be out there of characters you can be. But on top of that, you no longer require that somebody has to give up playing the game to narrate it, because this game comes with an app. So the app will actually walk you through the whole game. It makes the game fly through. You're usually done in about 10 minutes. Yeah, the game's a lot quicker, so maybe you're not getting the full element of feel. But to me, it's so much more fun. It's great that everybody gets to participate, and it works as a fantastic game, not only for your Halloween, but if you combine it with One Night Ultimate Werewolf, One Night Ultimate Alien. There's a bunch of games you can put together to make it into a bigger and bigger game, more and more players. Above that, 257, Race for the Galaxy. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Race for the Galaxy, and it's not because the game is bad. I actually love the theme, which is funny because I've been told that Race for the Galaxy is almost supposed to be using a lot of what you used for the game Puerto Rico back in the day, kind of revamped. I've never really seen that. I don't understand it, but I've heard people compare the two. That being said, I don't play the game enough, so when I'm playing, I'm always trying to remember, like, wait, what cards do what? How do you balance this? And I always get crushed. So I'm just not having a good time. If I were to commit to the game and play it a whole bunch for a while, I could probably in about a month's time get to the point where I could play this game and enjoy it, and then just keep enjoying it. I've had some good games, I've had some horrible games, but I just don't want to play it that much because it's not a game that's going to ever make to my top 20 or 30 games, and those are the games I want to be putting in the commitment of playing 3, 4, 5 games in a year. Those are the ones I want to commit to giving a portion of my time compared to a play of my time. So it's a good game, but it's still not one I'm ever going to pick. Above that, we're going back to the old school. We're going 2-player. 256, Battleship. Battleship is still just one of those games that if you're just looking to go to your parents' house and pull out an old game and play something that doesn't require a lot of learning and that's simple and that you can just kind of laugh during, it's not a strategic game. It's a pure luck game. You can put together your idea of how you're going to hunt down the other ships or how you're going to hide your ships. At the end of the day, it is just a luck game. You could do all the work in the world and still be unlucky because your opponent just randomly on the first turn says a spot and gets one of your ships, and now they're just going to run through your ship. So for me, Battleship is, again, not one I would pick often, but if I'm at my parents' house and one of my sisters or my parents are like, hey, let's play a game of Battleship, I'm not going to say no. 255, Dominant Species. Now, Dominant Species is a hard game. This is not an easy game. I've never got to enjoy a true game of Dominant Species. The best I've done is I have played a 2-player game where me and my opponent at the time, and this was years ago, both were really good at the game and knew what we were doing, and we controlled three different species apiece. I've played a 3-player game of this before where we had a general idea what we were doing, and the 3rd player was okay. But I've never gotten to play this with people who legitimately learned the game, knew what they were doing, and could really play this at its full player count. The game has been revamped. I've looked into the new version. It's definitely better as far as it's more balanced, but it's lost the edge as to why the original was so good. So I prefer to play the 1st edition, not the 2nd edition. But it's a game that I'm not going to pick very often because there's nobody yet that I truly trust can sit as a minimum 4 of us to play, maybe 5, but at least 4 of us to play the game and feel like it's being played by players who understand what's going on. And until then, it just kind of rides in this middle point of, I like it, I would love it if somebody picked it, I'd be okay with picking it if I knew I had opponents. I just don't, so it sits there waiting. 254, Dragonwood. Now, Dragonwood is a kid's game. This was my first game that my wife's parents gave to me for, I think it was our first Christmas together. Her parents gifted that to me, which was very nice. They had heard I was into board games, they looked into it a little bit, and they found some game that was supposed to be pretty good, and they sent it to me. And I played it with my sister, and we liked it, but it was definitely more of an introductory to this newer style game for kids. It's not a lot of strategy, it's primarily luck because of the shuffling of the decks, but it's a great game that I've held on to all these years because it is a good game to use to help, say, my daughter, for when she's ready to start learning certain styles of games. This helps to learn that style. So it's a good game. It's just not one that's on my play at any time soon list. It's on a down the line with my daughter list. 253, King of New York. Now, I only recently played this game, trying to figure out, was this game the game I thought it was? I don't know what game I thought it was, but this was not exactly what I remembered. I always had an image in my head, and when I saw the board and I saw the setup, I was like, this isn't what I've been imagining all these years. So it was better than I thought. It's a game that I'm not jumping to go play, but it's a game that I now, compared to 2 months ago, where it was on an absolutely no list, now that I've gotten a replay and I realize it's not what I had in my head been visioning for all those years, now it's on a list of I'd be willing to play. I'm not going to ask you to play it. It doesn't fully grab me, but I'm not uninterested in this game style. And for that reason, it's my 253. 252, Canvas. Canvas is an art style game. You're slowly putting together different types of art, getting symbols below, trying to point out. It's okay. A friend of mine brought it as part of this group of different art style games one night, and it was okay. It was fun. We played, I think, 2 rounds of it, and I enjoyed it. I thought about picking it up because I thought, oh, I think my wife's family might enjoy this. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it's not a hard game, but the types of things you're doing in this game are not the things that we play in regular games. It's a little bit niche, and as a result, this is not a game I felt they could pick up very easily without having to expect them to expand their board game knowledge. So it wasn't really for them, and for my regular game night, it was too easy. So it was this weird situation of, I won't play with the family because it's a little bit too complicated for them, but I won't play with my game group because it's not quite complicated enough for them. It fits into this odd pocket in between, and that's not a great place to be. So I like the game. It's a great style. If my family ever gets to a point where I feel like they've earned a couple extra understandings of styles of games that I think that they could play this, I would bring it in. But for right now, it's kind of just on the outskirts, and I'm not willing to introduce it to them. 251, Letter Jam. I do love word games. So not all word games, I'm not a massive fan, but I like a good game that gets me thinking and using, whether it's spelling out words, trying to use what you can to get stuff on the board, like a Scrabble type setup, or having some kind of a get-together, party-esque game where you're using words. Letter Jam has a situation of working as a team, trying to give clues, trying to get certain letters and figure out what the word is. It's a cool concept. It doesn't work for everybody. It's not a game that fits for all people. This is more of my family I'd aim in this game for. And in my family, I could say for the word spelling, my mom would love it. But to get to that word, it's a little hard for her. You know, a couple of my sisters, to get there, they'd like, but the word spelling, they're not a huge fan of. So there's characteristics of this game that fits in for each person. But if I could get just 2 people that could really fit in and enjoy the game, I'd love this game at 3 or 4 or 5. 250, Quirkle. Now, Quirkle is a game that I picked up many years ago. It's blocks, you have different shapes, you have different colors. When you're putting something on the board, you're scoring because you're trying to get it to line up, whether you're getting it in part of the group of the shapes or the colors. You can put a block down and it could connect multiple blocks into the same row, or it could connect at an intersection and count twice. So it's Scrabble-esque in that game. However, unlike Scrabble, which is on a preset board, you have to be careful because all of this is on a freestyle on the table. So you have to really be paying attention to make sure things are properly lined up. You don't want to have this all crooked. Now, I didn't play for many years because I was expanding my board games. This was a nice first game in my early collection. But, well, I haven't quite gotten her to understand it yet. My daughter, who's now 3, has pulled this out. It's one of the games we use as just toys. But she understands how to group things together. So I'm starting to get her to play this game. Just little bits of it. But I'm excited to get this out a little bit, so it is one that me and her sit down and play together once in a while. Number 249, Ragusa. Ugh, I hate that I have to rank this so high, because, and it's not that high, it's 249, but I just mean, it wasn't even in the bottom 100. I make a joke, me and another friend make a joke about this, because one of our friends owns the game, and he loves it, and then the other 2 of us are the ones that always play with him. And we're fine with it, but it's nothing special. It's interesting because you all kind of start in the same spot and you put something down, and now by putting something down, it says, well, now you, every time that your next turn starts, you automatically start with whatever those resource counts are. So if you put yourself in the corner and it says you got like a stone and a wood and something else, the next round you start with those and you look at the next building out and you go, well, what do I need? Oh, I need a stone and a wood. I'll build there then. And now, the next round after that, you have your stone, your wood, and your whatever the other one is. But now you may be getting another couple wood, and maybe you're getting something else. So, it's just an interesting balancing act. You're trying to slowly make your way into the city. The city, you're going to get more point values for things. It's not bad. It feels like if you know exactly what you're supposed to do, you're going to be able to do it every time you play the game, and it's going to be easy to just destroy. So our friend who owns the game usually wins because he knows exactly what to do. I have yet to unlock that setup, but I'm not a huge fan of games where, hey, I know if you do this, you're probably going to win. And that's what this game is. I've just yet to quite figure out what that thing is, and it's probably because I never picked the game. I never asked to play, so I'll play when they want to. And usually when we play, he remembers, the other guy remembers, but I'm always kind of like, wait, how did this work again? And by the time I figure out, I'm 4 turns in. Well, you're only going to get like 11 turns in this game. So if you don't figure it out till turn 4, you've probably already lost. But it's still an entertaining time every time I play it, so I can't hate the game. 248, Nidavellir. Nidavellir is one that's still growing on me. I love the concept, the theme, the art. I love what it is we're doing with our deck essentially of cards. I see this game as one that I need to get it in front of my friends. I've yet to get them to play. I've played it with my wife. I haven't played it with them. And I shouldn't say that, it wasn't my wife. I played this on Board Game Arena. That's where I actually learned the game. It's one that I think if I can get my friends and I to sit down and play it, it'll be better. Board Game Arena is a fantastic option for a lot of games. The issue I run into with it is I love playing, say, Azul there because it's very simple. But if I'm going to play a bigger game, like, say, Stone Age there, I want to play Stone Age with my friends. When we jump on, we put on our headphones, we're all talking to each other. But I don't want to play it with strangers and not talk to anybody because I kind of get lost in the game sometimes. I don't really know what's going on. The more complicated games. I tried Great Western Trail on there. It just didn't land for me. Nidavellir was okay there. I learned the basics. But I think this is a game that needs to be played in person, so I really want to get this physical version in front of my friends and see if it can rise up the ranks a lot more. I could see the potential, and that's why it's so high on the list, but I've yet to truly see if it's going to land that potential. 247, Age of Civilization. Now, for instance, this is a great example. Had I had a few more plays in Nidavellir, there's no way that Age of Civilization should be ahead of it. However, Age of Civilization is one that I have played with my friends, and I've seen its potential. This is its ceiling. It's not getting any higher than this. It's never rising in these ranks. If it does, it's only because something else has really fallen apart. It's not going to get better than a game, but another game could get worse than it. It's a small, simple to play, easy to set up, easy to pack down, runs through in like 15-20 minutes type game. And that's great. But I've seen it at its height, and I'm not going to have any more interest than I already do. I'm not going to ask to play this game, but if my friend brings it, I'm happy to play. 246, Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. This is an interesting one. I will fully admit, I never get that excited about the game. I really don't. And then we pull it out and we play it, and by the time we're finished, I'm like, oh right, this is a great game. I don't know why, I just always kind of forget how good it is. And it's just one of those games where like the first few turns I don't really see it. But then all of a sudden I'm like halfway through the game and I'm starting to see it. And I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm starting to see what's going on here. And then you get to the scoring. And all of a sudden you're getting all these scores. And then you're like, oh my god, they're killing me over there. I don't even know why I tried. And then you realize, yeah, they killed me on the right side, but they got destroyed on their left, and they only get the lower score, so that's the score they get. And then the person that helped them make the big score has the same issue. They get the score on their opposite side. And then it comes to me, and I may not have done as good as their big score, but I was mediocre in both. I actually think I've won this most times I've played, or I've been right there. It's a game that I tend to be pretty even in my scores, and I compete. It's one that probably deserves to be higher on the list. I think I need to play it a little bit more often. We only play it like maybe once or twice a year, but every time we do, I have a good time. Number 245, Cult Express. Now, Cult Express is one that I initially played years ago at my first game group, and it was fine. Then, during COVID, this current game group, we were playing it through Board Game Arena, and Board Game Arena's setup for it was awesome. I really enjoyed the art of what we were doing and seeing everything as it was going off and how pieces were moving around. I really genuinely enjoyed this game. It's not one I want to physically own. I've seen the physical copy. It's a big setup, and it's hard to follow through with everything. But as a Board Game Arena game, it is so much fun. So I really think this is one that has probably hit its height. I know where I enjoy it. It's not a friend's game. It's not a family game. It's a Board Game Arena game. And it needs to be with friends on Board Game Arena, which really limits it because we don't often get on as a group. But I really enjoy it. 244, Catan Jr. Now, Catan Jr. is a game that I got to try it out. I enjoyed it. It's kind of like these little islands. They bring in a little bit of a different way of how things maneuver around. You know, you're using a lot more of these resources to really control things on the board. It's fine. I think it's a great way to introduce, say, my daughter one day to the Catan idea of a universe and have her begin to learn the game before she's ready for the big game of actual Catan. Catan feels like an introduction game, but it's not an introduction game for kids. It's an introduction game for beginners. For kids, Catan Jr. is a great intro game. So I enjoyed it. I actually played it with my wife, and we played a few games and had a blast. And it's a game that we're waiting to play with our daughter because me and her family love Catan. We really can't wait to get my daughter one day to play with us. So Catan Jr. is on our shelf of just, let's count it down. One day my daughter will get to play, and once she starts playing that game, it'll be maybe a year later, we can at least give her a try at Catan. 243, Phase 10. Now, Phase 10, this is the card game. This is one that is a easy, pull it out, play it in the afternoon, do this over the summer. My wife and I love playing Phase 10 together. It's not that the game is one that we're jumping to pick, but when we have it's essentially on our small list of, she says, I don't know how long I want to play a game for, but I don't really want to think today. And I go, okay, Phase 10 is one of the 5 games we'd pick. because if she just wants to play one time, we can be done with it in like 15 minutes. But if she wants to play it multiple times, we can pull it out and play 2 or 3 games in a row. And while we're playing this game, if we need to pause, we can pause and just keep track on the paper and come back to it another day. And the game itself doesn't require a lot of thinking. You're just rolling dice. Or actually, in this case, you're doing the cards. 2 different ways to play the game. So for me, it's a fun game. It's not one I'm going to ever ask my friends to play, my family to play, but my wife and I, it's a great 2-player game. 242, going back to 2-player, but a little bit more old school, Mastermind. It's another one that, it's actually, I don't know anybody who owns it right now. This is not a game that I used to play anywhere other than high school chess club. When we were in high school, I had a chess club. Chess Club had a couple mind games for you to kind of test yourself on, and Mastermind was one of them to help you just be thinking and see how you could adapt. And we used to love playing that game. It was one I really enjoyed trying to puzzle out, and I think that this is one of those games that it's a fun, you can just play it 2-player, and 2-player really means 1 player. Somebody makes the code, somebody else is guessing. That person can be playing on their phone, and when the other person is ready, you look up and you go, those are the right ones, those are in the right place. Now try again. I love it. It's a great concept. 241, Silver and Gold. Silver and Gold is one that a few people I know own it. I'm not opposed to playing it. My issue with Silver and Gold, again, same as a lot of these games in this section, is just I'm never going to pick it to put out. I've yet to get to the point where I'm excited to pick a game. I've gotten to some games that have potential for down the line being played, or that are more likely because they fill in gap times. This is more of when me and my group that normally plays Mondays occasionally run a Saturday get together. Like once every 3 to 4 months, we try to do like a full Saturday play. And when that happens, we're going to pick a huge game like Twilight Imperium, or we're going to pick a bunch of small games. And usually, either in between games while somebody's getting lunch for us or something, or near the end when a couple people have left and it's gotten dwindled down, this is the kind of game that gets pulled out and we'll play, 2 or 3 smaller games. And this has gotten pulled out a couple times. So it's a good game. It's just not a game that really is meant for most board game get-togethers. It's on the occasional. Number 240, Cosmic Encounters. Now, Cosmic Encounter was one that I used to play in my old game group. And that's really the only place I've played it. I never got massively into it. I think part of the reason was I didn't like that game group had set additional rules to the game. Normally in Cosmic Encounter, it's about trying to gather via trade and defeating people, the discs from other players. And I believe it's when you get to 10 other players' discs, you win. And that's normally the setup. The issue I had was you could trade 1 for 1, 2 for 2, 3 for 3, whatever you want to do. And they kind of cut it off and said, no, we're only allowing trades for 1 for 1. I didn't like that. I felt that took away because if you weren't a power person, trading was your power. So to take away the ability for the trading really hurt it. So I got annoyed and I didn't like the game for that reason. But the game itself, played by its actual rules, allows for the trading to be more powerful, and that allows for you to compete properly. So for me, at that version of the game, I believe the game's a lot better. So this is kind of a little bit of not its floor, but not its ceiling. It's somewhere in the middle. I think that this game could be better than it is, but not much. It could maybe move up 20 or 30 spots. I don't know if I'm going to have the opportunity for that. Currently, nobody I know owns the game. So until I have the opportunity to play this with a different group by its actual rules, to really judge it again, it's sitting here in its middle point. It's not at its floor because I've played it, I've enjoyed the game, and I've seen what I believe the game should be. But I need to play it again to see, am I right and it should be better? Or did they fix the game the way they did it and its actual game makes it worse? I'm not sure if I'm going up or down, but I believe it could move up as maybe 30 spots. It could also drop 30. 239, Libertalia. Now this is Libertalia, the first edition. I haven't played the new edition. I think it's Gales of Windcrest or something like that. I haven't had a chance to play that version yet, but this version I've owned for many years. I've played it dozens of times. My wife loves the game. We just introduced it to her dad, and he really enjoyed the game. I like the game, but I feel like it gets a little repetitive. I understand the concept. You got 30 cards, you shuffle, you get your 9, everybody else gets the same 9. You all play 6 cards. Now you get 6 more, so you're carrying 3 cards to the next round from the first round that might be the same, might be different. And then you use 6 cards again and you bring another 3 over. So at the end, out of the 30 cards, you've used 21 of them. 9 cards have not been used. I enjoy it, but I feel like I've actually had my wife test try this game with me in a different way, where instead of doing that, we all got random cards, and so we didn't know what the other players had. Now, it wasn't better necessarily, but I feel like there's just always been something missing for me. I feel like knowing what the other players has gives this game a little bit of a disconnect. So I'm not sure what it is, but I feel like there's something for me that's just off. And for that reason, it's always been a little difficult for me to fully commit to the game. But I enjoy it. And some games, if you get exactly the right setup of like the cards and the combos, it's amazing. And other games, I'm not really sure. So I'm not sure what you could do to really change this, but it is a game that I think right now it's at its current high for me. If anything, it used to be early on way higher. It's dropped through the years. And I don't know if this game's going to hold where it is or if it's going to continue to drop, but it's just one that for some reason kind of lost me. I do think I should try the new version. I'm not a big fan of what I saw they did to the art. And even though the pieces that are supposed to be your loots, they're on a way better, now they got these tiles that they're on. So it's a way better material. The look of them just has been lost. It's not as good as what it used to be visually. But maybe the game's been improved. I would really like to try 2nd edition and see if maybe that's improved whatever it was bothering me about the 1st edition. 238, 5211. So this is a card game. It's all about different suits and having to try to match them up and see when you can place them out. I love a good card game. This is one that I actually got based on the Azul theme, and it was a simple play. I've enjoyed it. I think it's one that is going to get a little bit more play when I start going on vacations away again. I haven't been on a vacation with my family where we've gone away in a while. My wife went on a couple and I had to skip out on them. The vacations I have gone on have been myself. I did PAX East by myself. I've got the World Series of Board Gaming coming up in September by myself. And when we've been part of the family vacations that I've been joined, it's been that they've come here. So usually I get on a plane, I go with my wife to Mexico or somewhere with her family, and we spend like a week or two together. And when I go, I only can bring so many games, and usually I bring a good little group of card games. I believe 5211, currently at 238, I think that game has a chance of moving way up, because that's probably going to be one of my main games to bring for future trips, giving it a lot of chance to either prove itself to be as good as I think it is, or to get old quick and to drop. But we'll have to see where it lands. 237, hey, that's my fish. So it's a simple game. You're penguins. You're going and grabbing the fish. When you do, the ice goes away and it becomes water. And so you get interesting setups because you each have 4 penguins out there. As you're doing this, if any water comes in the way, you can't get on the other side of it. So you could try to cut off parts of the ice and make it so like, all right, my penguin now has full access to this group and nobody else does. So I'm going to ignore that, and I'm going to go work on the other areas. There's ways to attack the game, and I think that it's got a little bit of strategy to it, but not a lot. It's more so the fact that it's a nice little setup. It's not so large that I can't bring it with me on a trip or in the car to go do something. And my daughter's getting to an age where I think that she will start to get to play this with me. She may not completely understand the idea of counting all of her fish together yet, but she definitely understands the idea of moving a penguin and collecting a piece and feels like she's winning. So I want to see if this is a game that can give a little bit more play with her. My wife and I have played it. My sister and I have played it. We've enjoyed it. It's not one of our favorite one-on-ones, but we've enjoyed it. It can go to 4 players, so hopefully my daughter and I can start to play it, and eventually we can play it as a family. 236, Salmon Run. We're sticking with the fish. Sam and I have only played a couple times. This was at my last Saturday get-together, and the concept of the game was very straightforward and simple. You were making your way up the river, and you were trying to essentially see who the first one was to get to the top. You were all salmon. But as you're on the move, you're trying to dodge a bunch of things. The current, the bears that are out there trying to eat you. There's a whole bunch of things in your way. So you're trying to take advantage, see what you can do for movement, trying to dodge people and the attacks that your opponents are kind of throwing in your way and the ways the current are hitting. It's a fun game. It was not visually something I was excited about, but the game itself played way better than I was expecting. So I had to give it credit. This is its height. I don't expect to ever see it really go higher than this, but for a game I expected nothing from, I got an okay game. Now, for one of my friends out there, I know I'm going to get the "this isn't a game," but my 235 is a game called Left, Right, and Center. Now, it's a small game. It's barely a game. You could make the claim it's primarily luck. But at the same time, go and roll dice for any game that requires rolling, and you're having a luck game. Left, Right, and Center is fun for me because when you're getting together and a bunch of people want to play a party game, Left, Right, and Center can be one where those of you who don't want to be acting out things and yelling and screaming, trying to solve a puzzle, can just roll your dice, move your chips. Everybody can put a little bit of money in the center. Usually we all put $1 in the center, and you just keep going until the last person's left standing. Now, there is the option. There's a new game which is like Left, Right, Center, and I think it's like random or something. And if you roll this fourth option, you get to choose a player at the table and snake something from them. So, or maybe it's you give it to them. I can't remember which way it is. I haven't played the version yet. That could help a little bit because it puts a little bit of strategy in if you're lucky enough to roll that die front. That being said, it isn't much of a game, but it's more about the atmosphere it's setting for you. This is a great, hey, we got 10 people sitting in a room and we all were playing a game and we wanted to do something to just laugh for half an hour. The game can take a while, so it's really good for that reason. 234, Dominion, the original deck builder. Now, Dominion is a game that I own the base game of. I've played it a couple times. It's not one that hit huge for me. And the reason is I bought it because everybody kept telling me Dominion was such a great game. And it wasn't bad. But it's hard to recognize that a game is great when you've already played multiple games, like Clank, for instance, Dune Imperium, multiple deck builders, which are all coming from the original deck builder, and so now the original kind of feels stale when you haven't played it first. If it was my intro game, I would have felt totally different. But as a game that I had played already 5 or 10 different deck builders, and then I played it, it was just okay. It's not one that I ever choose to play, although I do think I need to give it more chances. I haven't played even with all the cards from the original game yet, because I only played it a couple times. But it's a game that I recognize that it's a good game, and if somebody were to say, hey, let's play it, I'd be excited to play. This isn't a, I'd be okay to play it. I would be excited to play Dominion again. 233, another game that I haven't picked, but I would be excited for somebody to ask me to play, Crokinole. Crokinole almost feels like it's a new version of darts or shuffleboard or pool. It's a physical game. Now, I'm not into flicking games. I don't like them. The fact that there's an entire category called flicking games annoys me. Because to me, if you were to put them down and you were to say, okay, what is a flicking game? Is it a board game? Or is it some kind of a physical activity, a sport? I shift more towards sport. It requires skill. It requires you being able to aim, you being able to pick the level of strength behind the hit. Understand, there's just pieces to it that to me don't feel very board gamey. They feel more like a sporting type game. And when you say, well, wait, is that a sport? It's tough because, I mean, darts is a sport. Pool is ranked a sport. But also poker is ranked a sport. So it's not exactly a sport. I mean, you can make, because of the definition of sport, there's a lot of board games that could be considered a sporting game. But it's a physical activity. And so I always kind of get annoyed by these flicking games. That being said, Crokinole, unlike other games, to me, is such a uniquely set up game. I've gone to PAX East and seen entire sections of Crokinole just set up with players all day competing. It's a game that I would be willing to sit down and play. And so, ignoring wherever I would rank what a flicking game is, you have to kind of go by two different ways of judging things. There's how you judge something, and then there's what the community judges. Just because I think of something one way doesn't mean that's right. So sometimes you have to kind of roll back your expectations, what you think of stuff, and you have to go and say, okay, wait a minute, what does the community as a whole say? The community considers this to be a game. And so as a result, it's a game. And that's how it is. I'm not going to argue with an entire community. I'm going to go and say, do you know what? That's what you guys rank as a game. It's a game. So Crokinole is a board game. And as a board game, it has to be ranked as let me double check this, 233. It's a game I would enjoy to sit down and play with friends. I don't have a lot of opportunities to, but one of my friends does own a board, and it is on my list to request that we get this game out again soon. 232, Unstable Unicorns. Now, Unstable Unicorns, it kind of grabs me a little bit because unlike, say, Zombie Kittens, where it's just about the art to me, and after a few plays, you're kind of bored of it, Unstable Unicorns has replayability in it. Unstable Unicorns is more than just the art. There is a game there. And for that reason, it's a game that I can play with my family, with my wife's family, with my wife, with my sisters, with a few of my friends who aren't huge into regular board games, and then I can play it again. It's not a one time and now I'm like, give me a year because it's not gonna be funny anymore. It's more than just the humor. There's a game behind the art, and that makes it worthwhile. 231. Now this is a game I was excited for, and that excitement kind of dwindled quick. But it's not a bad game. Kingdom Builder. Now I've only played Kingdom Builder on Board Game Arena. And when I played it, I don't know if I've won every game that I played with my friends. I played a few with people online and I got wrecked. But with my friends, we all learned together. I want to say I won almost every game. It's a cool concept that the game essentially has 8 different quarters, and that they can flip to the opposite sides, so you randomly figure out which 4 you're using and then put them into a group together. Then based on those, it gives you different types of topography, different things you can go for spots on the board that are going to give you bonuses. And then as you place things down, it's going to be like, okay, the next card comes up, you have to go to this section. And you have to go there, and if anything you have on the board currently is touching it, you have to place off of yourself until you've either filled every space that's available to you, or until and if you do so, you then move to whatever space has that topography and you keep placing. Or if you never had it touching you in the first place, pick wherever you want. But once you put one down, you build from there. On top of that, there'll be certain things that activate that might say like, oh, well, you have these 4 spots. This one says tap it for your turn, and now you can go and you can immediately build an additional off the last card you placed or something like that. So it's an interesting game. It gives you lots of different types of scoring, but it always changes. Every game has different bonus scorings. So it's fun. It just, I feel like I thought I was going to get a game that was a little bit different. I like the way that the scoring changes. I like the way that the board shifts. But a lot of the game is just repetitively putting down stuff, and it takes a while to really see what the strategy is. So I like the game. I would play it again, but I was playing it expecting to buy it, and I made the determination, I'll play this again. I'll play this as much as people want, but I never want to own it. And that was a little bit of a letdown for me. 230, Oceans. This is a game that one of my friends brought to Monday night. We got to play it there. You're getting fish, you're different types of fish, you're slowly moving up through the different oceans. It was a fun game. It's one that we played, I want to say 2 or 3 games in a row of. And it wasn't my favorite ocean-themed game, but I had been looking for ocean-themed games, and this one was one of the first ones that we played that I genuinely was like, oh, this was good. I don't want to own it because I got a couple ocean themes and I like them more, but it was one that I enjoyed, and I told them, like, please pick it again. I don't want to pick it. You know, we've yet to get to that point where it's games that I'm craving to play again, but it's a game that I enjoyed playing, and I told them I would be glad to play it again. 229. This is a 2-player game. It was a PAX East exclusive for me. I had not heard of the game before PAX East. I got there, I saw it, I looked it up and went, oh, this looks pretty good. So I picked a game called Beer and Bread. Now, It's an interesting balancing act as you're trying to get different ingredients and you have to spend them in ways to activate to either make a beer or make a bread, and you're trying to balance out your piles. You can't make too much one way or the other because you only score in pairs. So if you end up making 9 beer and only 1 bread, you're only going to get 1 pair. But if you can make 4 and 5, you're going to score 4 pairs. So you're trying your best to evenly distribute your stuff. But it can be tough because as you're making bonus cards that help you to have advantages, they might be leaning you in a direction. And in order for you to get the other stuff, now it's still very difficult. So it's a fun game. I played it with my wife. I had an okay time. She did not enjoy the game. So I need to find another player to play it with. For me, it was a good enough experience that I said it was a 229, but I need to see with other 2-player, opportunities here if this game can keep rising or if it was not just her that dislikes the concept. 228, 2-player Liar's Dice. Liar's Dice was a game that when I was getting near the end of my list, I was trying to find games to play. I was like running out of opportunities. I didn't know what else there was left. And then I remembered a game I'd seen in Pirates of the Caribbean. I believe it was either at World's End or the second one. I'm forgetting the name. But a game they had played on the ship. And I was like, oh, that's right. There was some kind of a cup with dice game. What was that? I looked it up. Turned out it was based off an actual game called Liar's Dice, where the concept is you all shake your dice up, you place them down. Each player can look at their own dice. Those dice will have so many fronts, so you have 5 dice. You might say like, oh, I have 2 3s, 2 4s, and a 5. Well, a player will have to make a count and say, all right, well, there's 5 of us playing, so that's 20 potential dice. I see my stuff. I'm going to say 1 3. And now it goes to the next player, and their options are you can say 2 3s or you can say 1 4. And you're going to keep doing this. Either you have to increase the total number of the die that you see or the value of the die. And if at any point somebody accuses someone of lying, you all reveal. And what you're looking for is if they made the claim that there were, say, 4 6s and they show everything and there's only 3 6s showing. The player who said 4 6s takes a die, removes it, and now you have to redo it all. If the player reveals and there's 4 or more 6s showing, now the player who accused loses a die. You all then shuffle them up, put them down again, you do your setup again, and you keep playing until you're down to only 1 player. Every time that you lose a die, when you get down to 0 dice, that player is out. So it gets harder and harder for players to keep in. 227, Boggle. It's an old school classic. You shake up this thing full of all the different little dice of different letters. You shake it and make sure it all fits into place. You flip over your timer, and then you pull off the top, and everybody gets to see the dice. And now you're writing down all your different words. You usually have some type of restriction, at least 3 letters. And then when the timer's up, everybody stops, and then you have to start reading off words. And for every time that there's a word that other people have, you have to cross it out, and you go for the unique words, and whoever has the most unique words based on the total number of letters, you get different scoring. So 3 letters is 1, 4 letters is 2, 5 letters is 3, and you usually either play for a round and see who has the biggest score, or you play till the first player to reach a certain score and they win. It's an easy game to pull out with family. It's one of those games that I still enjoy playing with my family. It's one that's just lasted for decades. I remember playing this with my grandma, my mom, my wife. It's just an easy game to pull out. It's not one I jump at. It's one that's really kept at my parents' house, but it's one I enjoy when I get to it. 226, Lizard Wizard. So Lizard Wizard was a game that I picked up this past year. I wanted to try something new. From the same people that made Raccoon Tycoon. You got multiple sections on the board. You're trying to slowly collect cards and use them for different opportunities to score. It's a very well-balanced game, and it's really almost like a stock market game in a lot of ways. It was a great theme, very good art, fun game, but it's definitely one that is big. It's not a huge setup, but it takes a good 5, maybe even 10 minutes to get everything in position. The game takes a while, at least an hour playtime. It's one that I would look at and say, I'm happy I own it. I enjoy playing it, but it's not one I'm going to jump at too often. Number 225, Seven Wonders Duel. Now, I played this primarily online. I do own the game. I played it in person a couple times, but primarily I played it through Board Game Arena. This was a great option for if you tried to play Seven Wonders 2-player back in the day, it just wasn't good. When Seven Wonders Duel came out, at first I was like, how is this going to feel like Seven Wonders? But it actually does. You get the feel of the different types of cards, of the ways that they face each other. They make it so that the science and the warfare feels so much more important. Because now, instead of the warfare being just worth potentially negative or positive points, and they may not even matter, now it's a tug of war. You don't want to let somebody get too far ahead because they'll conquer you and they win. Same thing with the science. You don't want to let somebody simply just keep learning science. Science usually in the old game was if you let somebody get all of them, you were going to lose because that was going to be a huge score. But in the new one, now it's preventative. You don't want to let them get all of it because if they get all of it, then they're too smart and they automatically win. So for me, Seven Wonders Duel is a really great game. It's one of those games that I'm going to be playing on the Saturday get-togethers and occasionally online with other players. I enjoy it. It's not one I often pull out. I really am looking for more of those 4 or 5-player games. But for a 2-player game, it's great. 124. This used to be my favorite game. That's insane to me. The idea that a game, I would say this was almost 7 years ago, was when it was probably around the number 1 for me. Puerto Rico. When I got introduced to Puerto Rico, this was in my original game group, and the instant I got introduced to Puerto Rico, it became my number 1 game. The way that it allowed you to make a decision on how you were going to spend your people, how you were going to go and draft different items. Did you want to go and make corn? Were you trying to make indigo? Are you trying to make coffee? The way that you were making your buildings, how they affected your board. There was so much going on, and yet you could come up with a great strategy, and if you did it just right, you could take advantage of the money, or take advantage of the victory points, or take advantage of the ships, and you could run a route that was going to score you huge. I used to love this game, but it's not an easy game to teach, and fewer people want to commit to a game that's this much of a setup and a pack down. So eventually this game just had to go away. So, well, I really liked the game back in the day, and I still appreciate the game. It's gone from a game that was my absolute favorite to a game that's still held out in my top 10, to a game that I still consider to be an absolute, I'd love to pick you. Last year, in 2022, it was still a game I would consider on the I'm going to pick it on occasion list. This year it's shifted to the if somebody else chooses to play, I'll be excited, but I don't think I'm ever going to choose to play the game again. It's run its course. I found too many games that are more enjoyable than it that other people also enjoy. And that is sad in a lot of ways, but also is so exciting to know that a game that was so great for me at one point has been surpassed by 223 other games. That's pretty crazy. One of those games, 223 itself, is Root. Now, Root is a game I only have played once. I just played it this year for the first time. I had heard about it for many years. I got it actually 2 Christmases ago. But as many of you gamers have probably been on Facebook or on another social media talking about and always point to, we have what we call our wall of shame. When I have a birthday come or a Christmas come or PAX East come, usually I get a large assortment of games. And what ends up happening is I get at least 10 brand new games that get put into a pile. And the pile continues to grow. And by the next time that the holiday comes up, it's like, well, I'm not going to just pick the brand new games. I'm going to pick the games I love, and on occasion we'll try something new. So if you're going from Christmas, December, to my birthday in March, probably not going to play more than 3 or 4 of those at the best. And then from my birthday in March to April, maybe May for PAX East, now there's another 2-3 games I get to play, and the likelihood is I've got 13 I haven't touched yet. Then you get to PAX East, now it's up to 23, and you just keep running into this. It's hard, and the collection keeps building this wall of shame. This past year, because I was trying to get games to the table so that I could learn them for this 365 review, I got a lot of the wall of shame wiped out. My wall of shame currently is down to the smallest it's been in over a decade. That being said, there's still games I haven't played yet. There are games sitting there that I just couldn't commit to learning fully. So I backed off and said I'll hold out for another time. 222, Potion Explosion. Now let me explain to you for a moment why this game is so low. I love Potion Explosion. I learned it on Board Game Arena, and I have a friend who owns it. And the determination I came to is, I never want to deal with this game in person. This game requires a large setup of putting things out. It easily can get lost. It's very kiddish. But the Board Game Arena version is a blast. So for me, the Board Game Arena spot is the place to play. But because I'm not playing with friends on there anymore, and it's just with random strangers, it's not a game I jump at a lot. It's one, though, that if I were to have my friends say, let's do a game night on Board Game Arena, I would jump at this game. There are certain games that no matter how much I like them, I just would never pull them out in a physical, in-person way because I just feel like it's a little too difficult. This game just struck me as, I feel like I'm going to lose pieces. I feel like it's a bit of a setup. I feel like this is a game that's perfect for Board Game Arena. So that's why it's down to 222, because it's just an annoying game for physically in person. Right above it, 221, Guardians. Now, Guardians is an interesting little sci-fi game that I picked up. It's about making a team of 3 different groups of cards, and you're facing each other, and you're trying to see who's able to wipe out everybody else. It's a fun game. It's one of those games that you can play this 2-player, and I believe it's either 2-player or 4-player. I think it's either 1-on-1 or 2-on-2. Potentially 3-on-3 as well. I think you can each have somebody take over a different card. But it's team-based. It's a fun game. I enjoy the game. It's one that I think deserves to get out more often than it does. But it was one of those games that I played it more so for this list. I enjoyed it, and I just haven't gotten it back out since. And I probably need to test try it with other people. 220, Hive. So Hive, it's a weird game because Hive is essentially, it's an insect game. And the best thing I could compare this to is it almost feels like a new way of playing chess. You know, chess has, you get your pawns, and you get your bishop, your rook, your knight, your queen, and your king. So you have 6 different style pieces on the board. 16 total. This game has a bunch of different bug pieces, each of which has different capabilities. You know, one of them lets you jump over other ones. One of them lets you move multiple spots. One of them lets you go really fast forward. You know, another one lets you stay on top of other pieces. You know, it's not just hopping over them, it's actually staying on top, which protects you. And it's not about wiping everything out. It's about trying to corner the queen. And when the queen is physically stuck, you win. I love that concept. I think that that is a really cool way of taking advantage of the idea of bugs and chess style and making a new game. It's not contained to a board. It's all played out on the table in front of you. So it's very open to how far you can go. It's a really interesting game. It's one that I think I need to play a little bit more often. I'm a huge chess fan, and I can see the capability if you find a few players that you can really enjoy this game with, so that you feel like you have good competition. 219, Penny Press. Now, when I saw the game, I wasn't that excited about it. I'm not a big fan when you see old school looking like comic book or newspaper games. It's not a theme that pulls me in, but the style of how you were going after certain types of papers, you're bidding, people can outbid you, you can come back and outbid them, you can shift your bid elsewhere, you're trying to make sure that you've got your stuff in before the end of the day comes, because when it's time to go and submit this to your paper, if you don't have enough, you're not going to get any points. Really cool concept. It's one that I really enjoyed, and I think it could rise a little bit more. I think it's roughly where it's supposed to be in the long run, but I could see this rising 10, 20 spots. It's a game that has potential for replayability in my collection, just in a low area. I don't think this is a family game, and I don't think this is a Monday night's regular weekly game. This is another one of those ones that could fit in for those Saturdays where a few times a year when we get together, this is a game that could get to the table. Number 218. Now, this is a game that, as far as I know, is not available to the public yet, and I'm not sure if it still is the name that I learned the game at. The game was called Compile. I learned the game at PAX East this year, and the idea of the game was that you each pick a different deck of cards with different names, and then you're trying to compile them. So you would be playing out cards you would have essentially 3 different battlefields going on. You'd have randomly put them out. You'd have the 3 things you have, the 3 things your opponent has. So there'd be certain names versus each other. And you'd be trying to get your cards to a certain level. I believe it's 10. And when you get them on your turn, your option is you can play a card or you can compile. So you play a card and you get to use its ability or abilities. There were 3 different abilities on each card. One of them was when you played it. Another one was when it was like lined up with other stuff of it. And a third one I think had to do with like when it's something compiled. And if you ever reach 10, you compile. So you would take all your cards and all the cards of your opponent and discard them. And you'd flip your card over. You've scored a point. So when you compile, you have to spend all your cards, but you're also destroying your opponents, which helps prevent them from compiling the same card in the same row. So you might decide to go and compile in a row you've already compiled before to prevent your opponent from winning the game. So you go back and forth doing this, and it's the first person to compile 3 times. All 3 of their cards wins the game. I was told by the creator, usually it is a 3-2. Most of the time you do get 2 and 2, and somebody just is the first to get the third. But in the occasional landslide game, somebody can compile 3-1. They've never seen somebody compile 3-0, but 3-1 has happened on occasion. It was a fun game. It's one that was just a small deck of cards. It looked like a lot of fun. I definitely have on my list of one that I'm keeping track of, hoping that when it does go to Kickstarter or just ends up at a convention, that I could pick up this deck because it's a fast game. And I think once I have the opportunity to own it, see the final result of the game, this one is probably going to rise a lot higher than it currently is, because it's one that I could see myself requesting to play. 217. Now this is one that does get the occasional request to play, but specifically only with my sister. So it's a very limited area where it gets to be played. It's called The Mind. You are playing with 100 cards, you shuffle them up, you deal so many cards to each other for the first round, and you literally are trying to play cards out, and you're making sure the card that you play is the lowest possible card. So if you have a 1, obviously you play first. But if I have a 1 and you have a 2 and you try to play that 2, and I don't get it down, this is a co-op game, so you have to be honest. Somebody plays a 2 and you go, shoot, I didn't get fast enough, I have the 1. You lost the round. So that's the end of the game. Now, there are ways to prevent it. They put in ninja stars and something else. So essentially you have lives, and you have ways of like playing a card that basically destroys a card. So you can play that and be like, okay, I destroyed that card, it's out of the game now, and now we keep playing. And as you reach certain milestones, because I believe you're trying to go either 10 or 12 rounds, every so many rounds that you make it, you earn additional pieces. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've earned back a life. So now if we were to screw up and lose, we would just lose the life and then restart the round. So it's a fun game. I've never won it. We did get, I want to say, to the final round once, but I don't think we won. It's one of those games that's funny because you're just being quiet, which is so unlike me, but I enjoy it. In the last game for today, number 216, is a game I've only ever played on Board Game Arena, Seasons. Now, Seasons is a game that I do enjoy. It's just not one I'm very good at for some reason. You have 4 different seasons, and you're going through 3 years. So as you're moving along on the inside of the track, you are playing cards. You're trying to use these cards to take advantage of, certain seasons. You can cash out certain season tokens to be worth certain amounts of points. If you're in a certain season, if you're in like the spring and you are using your spring tokens, it might be worth 3 points for that spring token. But in another season, it might have only been worth 2 or only 1. So you have to time when to use those, or when to activate cards, which you're going to be able to use stuff up and spend them in a different way for a different way to make points. At the end of the game, you're going to count up all the points you've gathered and see who wins. It's a fun game. I don't love it because I think it's just that my friends are much better than me, and that's why the game doesn't hit fully. I do wonder if I were to play this with, say, my wife or my sisters, who are not going to be to the level that a couple of my friends are for this game, if it might be a little bit more enjoyable because it can be a little bit closer of a game. I don't get upset if I can't win a game. That won't upset me. I just like to compete. So I can play and lose 99 out of 100 games and have a blast because we were competing in them. Or I could play and win 50 and lose 50 and hate it because I won 50 and I just won by a landslide, and I lost 50 and I lost by a landslide. I don't want to win or lose by a lot. I want it to feel like a struggle. I want to feel like I earned the win. And that's why, for me, losing is sometimes even better than winning, because if I'm really working hard and I don't win, it has a goal, and that eventual win feels so much better. It's the reason I don't understand anybody who's a cheater in games, because to me, it's like, but isn't the fun fighting to get that victory? If you're not very good, it feels so much better when you earn your first W. And I remember as a kid playing chess with my dad, and I couldn't beat him for years. I learned chess when I was about 5. I don't think I beat my dad at chess until I was like maybe 11 or 12. And when I reached about 13, 14 was the last time my dad could beat me at chess. And then I went to high school, and I was immediately the best player in the school. And then I went to college, and I took down tournaments. And now these days, my father-in-law, who's a very good player, plays with me. And he's okay, but I win 3 out of 4 games. It's a game that I worked very hard at to master so that I could legitimately compete. Now, you put me against a grandmaster, or you put me against even just a regularly playing weekly player, yeah, I'm going to probably get crushed a lot of the time. But I'm a good enough player where I could stand and at least compete and have a good time and not feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Well, this was 265 through 216. It was our 3rd day of doing our countdown from the least favorite to the favorite. We haven't quite reached the point where the games I'm mentioning are games I'm excited to go call out and play again, but these are games I enjoy. Today's list, all the way back to 265 Hues and Cues, every game here is a game I like. I enjoy to play them. I just may not want to play them very often. I may not want to play them with every single person. It may be a very specific person I like to play these games with. Or it may be a game that I just don't want to make it my choice, but on your choice, I'm pumped to play the game. We will jump back into the next group tomorrow, and hopefully we're going to start getting a little bit more excitement level for these games. Until then, you've been speaking to the Meeples Champion. I'll talk to you tomorrow.